So hey guys, welcome back to another video. This week Ford sent me the 2023 F-150 Raptor R, which is one of the biggest and baddest trucks on the block, if it isn't already, because as we know, the TRX is actually going away with its supercharged V8. Meanwhile, the Raptor R soldiers on for at least another model year. Now in this video, I want to cover everything that I like and dislike with the Raptor R over my last week with it, and then in the second half of this video, go take it for a test drive and give you my driving impressions, because this is honestly what makes this truck quite special. So of course, my first and most liked aspect of this truck is what's under the hood and what makes the Raptor R version. And as the 5.2 liter supercharged V8 engine, which pushes out 700 horsepower and 640 pound-feet of torque, either through the rear wheels only or all four wheels via the four-wheel drive system. And I have to say, this is one of the biggest reasons why you want the Raptor R version over that of the standard Raptor, which is already quite powerful for what it is. So as we know, the TRX in its current iteration with its supercharged V8 is soon to be killed off after the 2024 model year, and the Raptor R appears to be soldiering on in the next generation for at least another year or two before eventually the emissions regulations will likely tighten up and eventually kill off this powertrain altogether, which as we know is quite unfortunate, but that's the way things are heading. But as of right now, this truck will soon to be the only 700 horsepower internally combustion powered pickup truck available. But just note, you won't be getting quite much more than double digits in terms of fuel economy, especially around town and depending on how heavy your foot is. Now, my second like with this truck has to do with the interior, and there's a couple different reasons I want to touch on. Number one, this truck on the inside is very, very quiet. So all things considered, with the 37-inch all-terrain tires and some of the off-road capability that it has to offer, I thought the interior cabin space was quite isolated, and this was also something that I mentioned in my F-150 Tremor video a few weeks ago. So I think as a whole, this current generation as well as the next generation F-150 appears to be very, very well isolated inside the cabin. Now, my second like here with the Raptor R has to do with the interior materials. Now, there are some optional equipment depending on, the spec that you get, including the carbon fiber trim on the steering wheel, the dashboard, and the door cards and stuff like that. So this truck appears to have that carbon fiber accent. But I think in general, the Raptor R comes with very, very nice materials, and the seats themselves are extremely nice. So these are an Alcantara leather suede seat, and I think they are Recaro branded as well, but they are extremely comfortable, not too high of bolsters, not too low, considering some of the off-road type of driving that you'll be doing in this truck. But I just found the seat comfort to be extremely nice, especially with the materials, the heated and ventilated functions and stuff like that. So I think as a whole, the interior and the cabin isolation from the external environment was really why I like the interior space so much. Now, my third like here with the Raptor R has to do with its on-road driving manners, considering its off-road performance and equipment. Now, the Raptor R comes standard with the 37-inch all-terrain tires that are also optional on the standard Raptor, as that truck comes standard with the 35-inch tires, which are already very large for a full-size truck. But when you consider those large tires, the beadlock capable wheels, the Fox live valve adaptive suspension, which actually probably helps the overall ride quality and on-road behavior of this truck, I think it drives extremely well. Now, this is in comparison to the Bronco Raptor that I had a couple weeks ago, where that even has even more off-road capability than this truck, but has maybe a little bit worse of on-road driving manners versus this of a pickup truck. So, if you're going to be driving the Raptor R day-to-day around town on paved surfaces, it drives quite well, all things considered. I don't think you'll be disappointed if you're driving it just around town day-to-day, but of course, that does not do this truck justice, so I highly encourage anybody who's buying it to take it off-road at least occasionally, and it really can do the best of both worlds if you need a daily driver and a super capable off-road full-size pickup truck. So that is something that I really did like here about the Raptor R. Now, my fourth like here with this truck is very similar to that of the F-150 Tremor that I mentioned a couple weeks ago, and that is the digital gauge cluster. It's very simple to read. It's fairly user customizable via the infotainment system as well as the steering wheel controls, and just everything is laid out in a very ergonomic, easy to read fashion, including the font sizes and the refresh rate and stuff like that. So that is just something that I liked in the F-150 Tremor that I also like here in the Raptor R and most of the F-150s in general. Now, my fifth like here with this truck has to do with the steering wheel design. Now, the Bronco Raptor actually has a very similar steering wheel that has thicker 9 and 3 bolsters on the sides, so it gives you a little bit additional leverage and grip space for those off-road activities, or just resting your hand on that side of the steering wheel. It also has the nice large paddle shifters for the 10-speed automatic transmission on the backside. The left has your dedicated customizable R drive mode, as well as some of your safety systems and audio multimedia controls. And on the right side, you have the gauge cluster controls, some more audio multimedia, and then the 3 dedicated buttons for the steering, suspension, as well as exhaust, which you can customize via the different modes right there, and then go ahead and save them under your R specific My mode. So I really do like the steering wheel in both the Bronco Raptor as well as this Raptor R, and I think Ford put just a little bit of additional thought and effort into making it very ergonomic and very useful. Now, my sixth like with this truck, again, has to do with just the F-150 series in general, and that is the interior work surface. So you can press this button right to the left of the shift knob. It folds flat into the dashboard. Then you can pull the center console forward and fold it outwards, so you have a massive surface for whether you're working or, maybe just enjoying some food or lunch inside of the interior of this truck. This makes for a very, very useful flat workspace, and again, allows you to do multiple activities all on the inside of this truck here in the center console. So again, not a Raptor R specific item, but very, very useful depending on the F-150 trim that you get and the options that you choose. But I would highly recommend optioning it on the F-150 if you're considering purchasing one, whether you get it standard on the Raptor R or optional on some of the lesser trims. Now, my next like about the Raptor R has to do with that engine and of course the exhaust that Ford decided to install on it. Now, this exhaust is a valved exhaust, which means it has 4 different modes to choose from and uses electronic actuators inside of the actual muffler and exhaust assembly to basically open and close and divert the exhaust through that muffler to basically quiet or make it as loud as possible. And the 4 modes that come from the factory is plenty loud. It actually sounds quite aftermarket from the factory, which is awesome and exactly what you want in a vehicle like this, in my opinion. And you guys can listen for yourself and let me know how you guys enjoy it, but personally, it's one of the favorite aspects paired to that V8 engine. Now, my next like here with the Raptor R actually has to do with the Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. Now, this one has 18 speakers here on the cabin, including speakers here on the headliner and here in the front headrests. And the Tremor that I had a few weeks ago also had a B&O sound system, but I believe it had a few less speakers, and I wasn't overly thrilled or satisfied with the performance of that version. But here in the Raptor R, I actually think it's quite impressive. It's what you should expect for a 6-figure vehicle like this. And I think, overall the bass is crisp. It has nice highs. You can configure it on the infotainment system if you want to tweak the EQ just a little bit. And really, I have no complaints with the sound system and found it very enjoyable to listen to. Now, my next like here actually has to do with the exterior zone lighting on most F-150s. Now, this is not a Raptor R exclusive option, as I showcased in my F-150 Tremor video. And other pickup trucks in the full-size class have exterior lighting, but I would say Ford makes it the most user customizable and easiest to use. So in the infotainment system or to the left of the steering wheel, you can actually use some hard touch buttons to control it as well. But you can basically enable zone lighting, turn on the entire zones, which enables the entire perimeter of the vehicle to be illuminated and uses all of the exterior lights available. Or you can select specific zones either on the left, right, front, or back to produce or shine the light where you like it, depending on what your activity is. So I think overall it's very enjoyable to use and a very handy feature if you do a lot of activities at dusk, dawn, or during the nighttime and need just a lot of additional light, as it is quite bright. So liked it in the Tremor, like it also here in the Raptor R. Now, my first dislike with the Raptor R actually has to do with the fact you cannot option the Pro Power on board in addition to the standard power outlet setup here on this particular truck. Now, it might have something to do with the Supercharged V8 not being able to output enough electricity via the alternator or something else with the electronics of the truck, but that is something you cannot option, so you do not get access to the more powerful 2.0 kilowatt inverter system. You only have the standard 400 watt system for the interior cabin as well as the outlet inside of the bed. So my second dislike here with this truck has to do with the exterior lock buttons on the door handles. Now, I complained about this in the F-150 Tremor as well as the Bronco Raptor videos, and it also applies to this truck here. Unfortunately, the sensors on the door handles are simply not sensitive enough. Sometimes you'll press it, think you got it down, start walking away, and realize the truck did not lock. So then you have to come back up, press it again. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Other times you just got to press it 2 times in a row or hold it down for a second or two just to get it to recognize. And this is just something that really shouldn't be a big issue on newer products. There's many manufacturers out there that use touch sensitive proximity door handles very similar to this, and they work extremely well. But for some reason, Ford's door handles are not great in that fashion. Now my final dislike has to do with this number right here. Now yes, you're reading that correctly, 8.9 mpg. Now this has gone down just a few tenths since I started filming this video, as the truck has been idling for a period of time, but I was not exceeding 9.5 mpg while I was actually driving and moving the vehicle. So this is quite abysmal, and really maybe one of the reasons that you might want to shy away from getting this vehicle, but I would assume most people buying it don't necessarily care that's going to get, you know, single digit or around 10 mpg, depending on the type of driving that you're doing. So just keep that in mind if you're looking at the Raptor R, is you're going to get, you know, pretty poor mpg, but this isn't that dissimilar from the TRX, which also gets, you know, 10 or 11 mpgs. Both trucks are quite poor, but again, probably not a high priority, just something to note. Okay, so with my likes and dislikes out of the way, now let's get into the nitty-gritty of how the Raptor R drives. Oh my gosh. So that right there is one of the main reasons why you want to buy the Raptor R, and that is the 5.2 liter supercharged V8 engine under the hood that produces 700 horsepower and 640 pound-feet of torque. Paired with that four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive system, this thing hooks and books and does 0 to 60 in the mid 3-second range, which is just insane for a vehicle with not only this aerodynamics, but 37-inch all-terrain tires and weighs, I think, right around 6,000 pounds. So absolutely fantastic acceleration and sure to put a smile on your face. Now, believe it or not, the Raptor R actually has a lot in common with the standard Raptor, including the wide body stance, the wide end track, the off-road suspension, a lot of the off-road running gear, and you can option the 37-inch all-terrain tires with the beadlock capable wheels on the standard Raptor as well, but they do come standard here on the Raptor R just to make it that, you know, all-around badass off-road desert running machine that this truck really is meant to do, and I'm sure does quite well, although unfortunately I was unable to test that here in the Midwest, you know, in these conditions that we have around here. Now, under normal acceleration, you can hear that exhaust is quite loud even in the normal setting, and you actually cannot hear the supercharger whine all that much, which is a little bit unfortunate. I actually wish you could hear it much more pronounced than you can. So that is something, you know, I think that tuning could be done to allow just a little bit of that more supercharger whine to be a little bit more pronounced. Because if I'm buying this truck, heck, I certainly want to hear what's under the hood, and you definitely get the exhaust note out of this truck, but I would like to hear that supercharger just a little bit more. Now, as you guys might have saw here on the channel, I actually had a week with the Bronco Raptor just a couple weeks ago, and I have to say, this Raptor R actually has a lot of the same characteristics and, you know, some of the same off-road running gear as that vehicle, but of course in a pickup truck body, which combines the best of both worlds in terms of, you know, pickup truck usability, huge back seats, you know, very comfortable plush ride, quiet cabin, but you do get the pickup truck bed out back for all of those hauling activities you do, either from the, you know, hardware store, you know, off-road equipment, bikes, stuff like that, or, you know, just, you know, hauling your groceries back from the grocery store. Now, when it comes to some of the trade-offs that you're making, choosing, say, the F-150 Raptor over that of the Bronco Raptor, they're both very extremely capable off-road machines, and it's mainly going to be in certain tight trail scenarios where you're going to sacrifice here in the F-150 Raptor over that of the Bronco Raptor. Now, that vehicle is already very wide with the huge fender flares, you know, the 37-inch all-terrain tires, but it has, of course, the dual locking differentials, where this truck only has the rear locking differential. You're going to get the sway bar disconnect up front to help with articulation, and overall the suspension setup is much better, I would say, in that vehicle for, you know, the more rocky, you know, hardcore off-road, high articulation events, or the tight trails out in the woods as well, even though it is a wide body stance, and you'll likely want to opt for maybe the Bronco Sasquatch if you're doing more of that kind of stuff. But in terms of, you know, the open areas, desert running stuff, the F-150 Raptor and the Raptor R is likely going to be just a little bit better in those environments, maybe due to the slightly higher weight, as well as, you know, the additional power of the supercharged V8 underneath the hood of this particular truck. But even the standard Raptor should slightly do a little bit better in those environments. But you are going to pay a little bit of a price premium for the Raptor R version over that of the Bronco Raptor. So, you know, a bit of a trade-off there. I actually think I enjoy the this truck a little bit better than the Bronco. But again, comes down to use case and everything like that. Now, I would say the biggest trade-off you're going to have opting for the Raptor R with the supercharged V8 over that of the regular Raptor, or even maybe the Bronco Raptor if you're considering it, is going to be the fuel economy. Now, over my week with this vehicle, I've been averaging between 9 and 10 MPG. Now, yes, that's been a little bit spirited in terms of acceleration and driving, but I would say around town and city type environments, you're going to be averaging, you know, somewhere around 10 MPG, maybe just slightly better if you have a really light foot and are, you know, doing everything to maximize the fuel economy. But you know, that V8 with this exhaust note is certainly hard to ignore, putting your foot down when you have the opportunity. So just expect, you know, to be hit in the pocketbook in terms of fill-ups with this 36-gallon tank on this truck, because you're going to be doing it quite often, not getting much more than 300 miles of range to this fairly large fuel tank. And another thing that's not this truck's strong suit is going to be the handling. Now, it does quite fine considering the 37-inch tires and the fairly soft suspension, but merging onto the interstate here, yeah, even about 50 miles an hour, you're kind of starting to stress the tires out a little bit. But putting your foot down, oh my goodness. Now, out here on the interstate, the cabin is definitely much more isolated and quiet versus that of the Bronco Raptor. Now, one thing that is worth noting is the exhaust actually drones quite a bit, even in its normal setting at certain speeds, but luckily, with just a push of the button, you can put it in quiet mode and it instantly goes away entirely. So under lower throttle applications, you can put that mode, the exhaust in the quiet mode, and it will certainly quiet down and the drone goes away entirely, which is something I actually very much enjoy about this truck, is the 4 different modes you can choose for the exhaust, among the other settings, including the suspension and stuff like that. But in terms of, you know, how the truck drives out here at 75 miles an hour, well, it drives actually very nice. The suspension is extremely compliant. Steering is fairly precise. There's not a ton of play in it. You know, off center, just a little bit of hesitation, but you can see going up this hill, it gave it just a little bit more throttle. The exhaust actually went back to the normal mode, but it should, after we get up this small incline here, go back into the quiet setting. We'll have to see once we crest it. But, you know, the driver assistance technology, you know, I wouldn't say is not the best out there from, you know, my experience with Ford products. I think there's certainly better options in terms of driver assistance, but the lane keeping system works well. You know, adaptive cruise works well. Blind spot detection is there if you need it. You can hear the exhaust go back into the quiet mode. It is interesting how it kind of balances the valve, you know, between the throttle response and, you know, the necessary requirements for the exhaust flow with the V8. But anyways, you know, it does very nice out here on the interstate, much like that of in-town driving. And, you know, the stereo, the Bang & Olufsen, is very good, gets quite loud, has 18 speakers, which is a lot for a fairly small cabin like this. But I have no complaints with the truck out here on the interstate. And, you know, I would say in terms of cruising at this type of speed, I would expect the truck to do, you know, low teens in terms of fuel economy figures, which again is not very good at all considering, you know, efficiency. But, you know, 36 gallons will take you reasonably far between fill-ups, you know, maybe 350 miles. But yeah, really no major complaints with the truck out on the interstate. It does what it's supposed to do and is quite comfortable. So I guess to wrap up this video, the Raptor R is certainly something extremely special. And again, you know, getting to experience these enthusiast products has been a fantastic experience. I want to give a huge thanks to Ford for sending this vehicle out for me to test, because it has been, an opportunity of, I don't want to say a lifetime because that's a strong opportunity, but it has been a very pleasurable experience driving and getting to experience what some of these, more high-end enthusiast products have to offer. Like I said, this is a very special truck, something that you just don't get to experience every day. And if you're in the market for one of these, wanting to purchase one, I would, highly recommend you go out and check one out and, maybe purchase one. If it's your dream vehicle, you can use it for the off-road functionality that it has to offer, or, everything like that, because you just don't see vehicles like this very often. And certainly over the next couple years, I would say they're going to be less and less in terms of not only the supercharged and boosted V8s, but also some of the naturally aspirated engines as well. I know Ford has pledged, the Coyote 5-liter to be available for years to come, even while they start to transition to, electrification and EVs. But just listening to that engine purr, and the experience you get behind the wheel of it is just, crazy. So with all that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and or found something helpful. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button below. It greatly helps out the channel, these videos. Subscribe if you guys haven't already, and make sure to check out some other content I have here on the channel, including the Bronco Raptor, the Tremor, and other vehicles from other manufacturers as well. Let me know your thoughts and comments down in the comment section below. Would you buy a Raptor R if you had the money, or is there another particular vehicle you guys are interested in? But as always, I appreciate the support. Huge thanks to Ford, and as always, hope to see you guys in the next one.